Go.
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. Do any of the rental units have 10 points acquired, and what is the status? Thank you.
All right. That'll lead us into our director's report. Any other comments? Okay. All right, then let's director's report.
Hello. We're still obviously working our way through formatting this. And I will say Sean and Will are much better at Excel graphs than I am. So I'm working on my pivot.
Gonna say, if you need any help, I'm here.
Yes, I will find you. So the hiring team is still reviewing applicants. We did conduct interviews for a new director. I think we're close. So that's good news. Notices of violations have gone out to all properties that are not in full compliance with their rental licenses. And this includes this current year and previous, the 2023 to 2024, anyone that still has not responded to the January letter catching up on the rental fees. So after this, they have until April 15th. If we don't hear from anyone, we will start citing them. For non-compliance, we did also include in the letter, there is now an affidavit on the website. So if it is now owner occupied and they want to stop using it as a rental, they can sign the affidavit and turn that will close the rental license. But remember that anything that's not owner occupied now with the ordinance change would be considered a rental. So it's even family members. So we'll follow up on that. Cafe permits and on-street dining platform permits have been issued to several businesses. I'll have a lot more to discuss on that. And I know John and I have some thoughts on that as well. Zoning hearing board met for 3 applications for special exceptions for short-term rental units. All were granted. There was one for 119 East Market and units 1 and 2 at 1 North Church. They also approved the variance for 211 Dean Street that we spoke about last month for the sightline variance. No new subdivision land development. Barb did meet and they have recommendations on the agenda for this evening. Planning Commission, they met and discussed attainable housing, and Thomas, I think it's Doherty, gave a really, really great report on traditional patterns of building homes in Westchester that I'd like to put on the June agenda for council for voting session. It was one of the best presentations that I've ever seen, and the amount of information he had was, it was inspiring. And we have a really great planning commission. So code officers are issuing property maintenance tickets when they're not working on rental inspections. You will notice that in March, there were fewer property maintenance citations. There were some filed in April, but they were very busy with rental inspections. We had a lot of the large properties like Metropolitan, Market Street East, and those required a few re-inspects and took a long time. So they will also be patrolling town to check on cafe permit compliance and offering assistance to businesses on how to apply if they're not in compliance. So we are trying to partner with anyone that doesn't have a cafe permit and get them in the system. In March, tickets issued. There was a total of 91 tickets, and you can see, oh, my graph didn't show up. There's a graph somewhere where you can see that there are many more tickets in January, February, and March. So they are really increasing the enforcement. And I think they've been very productive. Rentals, there were 127 annual rental inspections in March. There were 5 new rental inspections, and that's up from February. There were 111. To answer Daryl's points question, there's one property that is close, could be at 10, but the court hearings have not been, they haven't had the court hearings yet. I think they're both in May. So the points won't be assigned until, and if and when the people are guilty. And there were 5 PD citations. I think I had 3 in our system, so I want to follow up on that. But I heard Chief Lee mention that there were 5 PD citations in March. And then this report, you can see that there were 71 enforcement cases total, 49 were open, 28 were closed. Some of those were me being really enjoying the SmartGov system and entering all of the illegal short-term rentals as cases so that we can then follow up, because you can sign, so that way we can follow. A lot of them have responded with affidavits saying that they are no longer short-term rentals, so those will get closed out. And then you can see the amount of permits. I won't read them all one by one. And the applications received, you can see that they're consistent. There's, we're getting many in, a lot of zoning reviews this month. And I just totaled the building permit inspections because each one is listed differently. So it was too much for a report. So there were 85 inspections this month. There were a total of 30 last month. So it was a busy month. And then code enforcement, there was 1 nuisance, 33 property maintenance, and 4 zoning violations. Any questions?
No, it's nice to see things picking up. So,
Very busy, never a dull moment. Oh, I did have on the agenda this, and I'm sorry, I didn't think that we should, I didn't include all of this information. There is a short-term rental application for 236 West Gay. I think that's the last one that was submitted. And then we also received a letter for a zoning hearing board extension application from West Goshen because we are abutting. It is for an existing, previously approved variance that they're just asking to extend for 2 years while they work on securing building permits. And I believe Sean wrote back saying that there was no issue. That came in a while ago, but it's a West Goshen zoning on 205 Carter Drive. It's an industrial site.
is there anything that we need to do for these items, or it's just?
No, just part of the report that I forgot to put in the director's report.
Okay. Any questions from you guys? No? All right, thank you. All right, I think, unless I'm misremembering, I think there was some confusion with the green team, the dark skies. We were going to coordinate something, but the person that was going to present is actually out of town, so it might have gotten on the agenda, but then we needed to take it off. So I think we're going to table this one until we can coordinate better on that one. So we can move to the Downtown Westchester Quarterly Report. John O'Brien.
Good evening, John O'Brien, Executive Director of Downtown Westchester. I'll try and be brief. I know you have my report. There's just a couple things I want to highlight. Thank you. I heard a lot of people giving shout outs to the adult Easter egg hunt during your last meeting. We had a great turnout for that. And we really focused that on driving people to our retail stores. So it's very successful. This past month, my staff and I met with Ramsey in the parking department. We at Downtown Westchester really want to take an active role in helping to market the change that's coming with the parking meters being removed in the downtown, so we can get out well ahead to get people over to the Flowbird app and comfortable with that this change is going to happen before it even gets in place, to hopefully minimize the number of discussions. So our goal is to not only through social media, but create some flyers that we're going to distribute around town, encouraging folks to get the app downloaded so that we can, yes.
Yes, because I remember that we tried a changeover like a year or two ago,
Mhm.
and I don't usually drive into town because I walk. But one day I actually went, and because I think I needed to get my dog to get her toes clipped real fast. And I got to Church Street, and I guess it was at that time when things were changed around, and like the signage was really like I couldn't tell what I needed to do. There was no meters. I couldn't tell if it had changed and if I was supposed to pay. It was a weekend, so I probably didn't have to pay, but I couldn't even find a sign that kind of
Mhm.
told me what to do. So just double check, make sure that your signage is clear and that
Yeah,
it's.
so our signage isn't going to be on the poles and stuff, since that's more, between the parking department and public works to manage. Ours is more trying to do public education ahead of time. And then
Oh, we got-
also when we get to the points of actually removing them, reminding all the store owners, whether you're going in for a restaurant, retail, get your haircuts, have them remind their customers, hey, this is, and another piece of public education is just reminding everybody to pay with the app in your car before you leave their car. I know there have been 1 or 2 instances where people pay as they like round the corner, and that parking can come through and it's not their fault. They read the meter or your license, it says it's not paid for. So just alleviate those issues. Couple other things that aren't in the report.
John, before you move
yeah.
on, are we giving those out to the businesses to hand out to patrons?
We actually have to update them now because now we have more zone areas, but we will, we actually talked about some other like smaller business card size things that will work on that, and I can spend about.
Yeah, it might be great to have those at this.
Yeah, and I would like
shops
us
and
to do this like months ahead of when this change is going to happen. So that way people are it's going to be a change. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be some people that are going to be a little annoyed, but just to kind of move that along. Additionally, we are helping Kildare's and 22 other restaurants who are running a food drive / fund drive for the Chester County Food Bank, the Westchester Food Cupboard. That is response to a $250,000 federal cut that the Chester County Food Bank recently received. So any help that we can get on promoting that, donations are currently being accepted. My newsletter had some list of what is being accepted and not. So we'd appreciate any help spreading that around. I know the restoration committee is going to kind of get to it, the rail restoration. We did help them with putting out a survey. The survey did come back very positive that, our business community looks forward to having the rail restoration or the rail restored. I'll let the restoration committee get into the details of what that survey said, but I just wanted to kind of note that. And then just the last couple things. This is a reauthorization year for the organization. We've been in contact with the borough manager and solicitor about we have to be reauthorized under state law. We're looking to hopefully schedule a public hearing with the full borough council in June to have public input on what our strategic plan should say. We're going to present one that's going to get mailed out to all the business owners and the property owners within the district as required by law. They will then have public input. You will give your thumbs up or down on the preliminary plan. If you give the thumbs up, it'll trigger a 45-day window in which commercial property owners within the district have the ability to put a remonstrance against for saying that they don't want the bid to be reauthorized. If more than 40% of those properties say they don't want us to be reauthorized, then we're legally not allowed to be. Assuming we get below that 40%, last time we only had one person object. Then after that 45-day window, we're hoping in August that we can engage with the full renewal process of adopting the ordinance and the municipal services agreement. Just the other quick things, we would love to work with the borough on developing policy around getting public utility companies and contractors who mark up the sidewalks with paint to outline those utilities to the conclusion of work to get that paint removed. We get a lot of work done in the downtown and it does kind of junk up the downtown. So I would love to kind of work on a policy that puts that on the contractor to say, if you come mark up this work, you have to restore the sidewalk to what it was prior to your engaging with the work. So I'm not sure what that would require, but that is something we've identified to keep the town clean. And then finally, we're just, we're encouraging people to shop locally as much as possible. We're seeing a lot of economic uncertainty. Consumer index is down. We did our 2024 economic survey, which we'll be sharing the data with you. We saw a lot of concern going into 2025. And we've also seen an uptick in the number of businesses who said they didn't have sales as strong in 2024 as they did in 2023. A lot of that is competition in the eatery space, but the discussion of tariffs being on, tariffs being off, our small businesses, especially on the retail side, they don't have the ability like big box stores to play with their margins. Any cost that they receive, they have to put onto the customer. And, there's challenges already with the inflationary side of the ledger. So we just continually pushing that message, and anything council can do to kind of push that message along with us is much appreciated. And that's all I had on my report.
Mr. O'Brien, for your reauthorization, are you going to increase your footprint? Is this part of your?
Yes, our hope is to more perfectly overlay the town center map along with some pieces of the commercial service map. So to give you some rough boundaries, south right now, on High Street, we currently end at Minor Street. The goal would be to expand down to Price Street. And then on East Gay Street and East Market Street to expand over here to Adams Street. We've heard from members of council, both current and previous, who've inquired about us helping certain businesses or revitalization efforts. We've heard from different business owners outside of the district wanting our help with marketing them, with being part of our events. So that will be part of this reauthorization plan that we're intending to bring before council.
The town center map,
Mhm.
why don't you just follow the town center map? Because that's pretty much where you're planning on doing it.
So one unique thing about our organization, the only areas that really wouldn't follow is a little bit of East Chestnut Street. And the reason being on that side of East Chestnut Street. So to be a benefited property, we go by a land use code for us. And that's how our assessment is done. So there are certain properties which are acting residential, but they're zoned for, or their land use code makes it appear that they have commercial presence in them. And it creates kind of a confusing situation for the assessment because they're really not a commercial property that we normally would assess. So that was one reason we did not move there. The other area is we did see pushback from property owners on South Church Street who didn't feel like our services, that they would see that full benefit. I, of course, have my disagreements with that, but I respect people's different opinions on that. So those are the two areas we didn't really want to. We will go,
Just because they're lawyers.
yeah, we will go a little bit into the neighborhood district in this plan because, for instance, El Limon, that property has requested to be part of the district. So that's technically in the neighborhood district. They'd be the only assessed property in that row because everyone else is residential. So it's a little bit of feedback, and we've heard, from the developer with the 5 North Adams, they're interested in being part of the district going forward. So that's why we're also coming down into a little bit into the commercial services district as well.
All right, Sean had his hand raised.
Yeah, on the geography question, we'll have a lot of time to talk about this between now and June, but is the assessment on non-residential uses only?
Yes. So we
So
have,
like in the
we
pic-
define them within the reauthorization plan as benefited or not benefited. If you are a benefited parcel, it's based on your land use code. So most of our land use codes are going to be not benefited properties. So while you are still in the footprint, you are not assessed.
I mean, in this picture of our downtown, these lovely mixed-use buildings typically have 1 or 2 apartments above 2,000 square feet of retail. Are you just assessing the ground floor
So
non-residential
they are
use?
all considered benefited properties. We do have a residential discount so that we discount the residential portion of the building using data we receive from the Chester County Assessment Office. But if you are like 100% purely residential, which the difference a lot we'll see with this new plan is if the retail overlay district is basically in our core area. So you'll always have that commercial presence on the first floor. Once you get outside the retail, you might have residential first floor. You're not assessed at that point.
So the bid is responsive to property owners that maybe have non-residential and or residential uses blended on the lot or
Yes.
so forth. Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions from anyone in attendance?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Planning Commission.
Matt Clapp, Planning Commission Secretary. Thank you for having invited us now. Going forward, hopefully we'll make this a regular occurrence. I'm here to hopefully briefly summarize our annual report for the Planning Commission for 2024, and then also hopefully get into the first quarterly report for 2025. I want to provide a little bit of background for full transparency. Several of my colleagues and I attended planning training sponsored by Chester County. Thank you for paying for that. The cost really paid off because during that class, we learned that the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code requires that planning commissions in Pennsylvania submit an annual report on their activities every year by March 1st. Unfortunately and ironically, we learned that requirement on the evening of February 28th. So we did not make that date. But still, we're better off than previous years because as far as we can tell, there's never been an annual report produced by the Planning Commission. So this will be a regular occurrence annually going forward. So, and Dana, if you could call up you had the annual report up, or whoever's driving, sorry. Yeah, if you go down, right, that's the quarterly report, the previous document, if you could. Thank you. 2024. Anyway, I'll speak to it while it comes up. The report, and I'll just really summarize the format and then go through a little bit of the executive summary. The report's broken up into two sections. Saldo applications reviewed in 2024, and then community planning issues, ordinance amendments that we discussed and or acted on in 2024. So as you can see, this is the executive summary, just a brief summary of the properties, the saldo applications that we reviewed in 2024, which plan phase they were in, whether the commission recommended approval, and the date of that vote. In the body of the report, which you guys will see, we intend to submit that for Borough Council review probably within the next few weeks. All the detail is provided in the body of the report associated with each property. So the specific motions, the specific issues we discussed and addressed with each property, votes, and current status as of the end of the year. So if you could scroll down to the next table, please. Thank you. These are all the procedures, ordinance amendments, and community planning issues that we discussed and acted on in 2024. You'll notice most of the proposed actions are indeed ordinance amendments. Whether we recommended approval and then the date of the vote, some of those are not applicable because those issues are ongoing. We don't have a ordinance amendment drafted yet, or we haven't reviewed it yet and voted on it. I'm going to take a pause here. I don't want to discount these, but I also don't want to bore you with all of last year's information. You guys have seen a lot of that, but I want to give you a chance to ask any questions or comments on the 2024 annual report.
No, just again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm really excited of all the work that you guys did last year and some of the things that we were able to accomplish and improve. So thank you.
Well, thank you for attending, Nicole, and all of the Borough Council members that have attended.
If I could just comment, this is really great. This is something that's been missing for as long as I can remember on council.
Right.
And even if we had questions, sometimes the minutes were coming out months later and it was after the fact. So this is phenomenal. So thank you for that. The report that was due March 1st, can you submit it anyway for the 2024, and you will do that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So really, that date is supposed to be submittal to you guys, the Board of Supervisors of Borough Council in this case. So we are going, I just wanted to make sure it got reviewed by our Planning Commission members before we submitted it for your review. So that'll be coming out this month or within the next few weeks.
Great, thank you.
And just a note, and I agree with you that this is kind of your one-stop shopping, hopefully. That's the goal of this. And we'll attach the minutes as well. So it's one-stop shopping for all your Planning Commission needs. So, all right, we can go to the 2025 first quarter report. This is a draft working copy because I haven't written the quarterly report yet. So I use the same format from the executive summary. Obviously, this first table, we haven't reviewed any saldo applications yet this year. And as far as I know, we don't have one for this coming month either. So from January to March, no saldo applications as of yet. So we're trying to take advantage of that lesser workload by addressing some of the ongoing issues from last year and new ones. So if we could scroll to the second table. Great, thanks. These are the issues we've addressed so far this year through the end of March. Building height, we actually started that last year. We submitted an ordinance amendment for Borough Council review. It got sent back to the Planning Commission for a little bit of refinement. We refined it. We voted on to recommend approval and send it back to you. I believe Jim sent it back on February 19th. So that should be in your hands for hopefully final approval. That's the only action that we've taken so far this year, but we're doing a lot of other work. The build to line, you might have seen that on the 2024. I think that even might go back into 2023. A now former Planning Commission member, Tom West, had started a very detailed, complex, and broad ordinance amendment to address the build to line. Since then, we submitted that. It got sent back to us for basically streamlining and simplification. It was a little too broad, a little too complex to actually implement into the code. Actually, can you scroll down to the next table? This will give some of the details. Thanks. All right, there we go. So now we're working, and in fact, a lot of these items are on our working session for this month. We are working to kind of resolve the conflation of the terms build to line and front yard setback. That's one of the root problems that we think in the code. And then also to hopefully eliminate the vagueness and confusion associated with the requirement to match existing adjacent setbacks. Those two issues have reared their ugly heads in almost every single SALDO application we've reviewed over the last year. So we're trying to resolve those issues. And hopefully within the next couple of sessions, we'll have a revised ordinance amendment. I noticed that the HARB review of SALDO applications in height overlay zoning districts is actually on the agenda further down tonight. I was made aware that you guys have an ordinance amendment from the solicitor for this issue. Basically, there was a gap in the code where buildings, especially large buildings in the zoning, in the height overlay zoning districts, were required to meet the historic and architectural design guidelines, but HARB was not required to review their plans. So now we're trying to close that gap so that we have an architecture consultant or firm reviewing those and making a determination of compliance with those design guidelines, so that the Planning Commission isn't going back and forth on our own with the developer to try to figure that out. We do have architects on our Planning Commission. We're lucky to have them, but we want to make sure somebody's reviewing those. Side yard setback language for each zoning district. Again, this is another item that has come up. This was actually brought up by a HARB member, but the bottom line is it's more kind of vague language in the code that we need to resolve and clarify so that developers and folks reviewing these plans can make assessments on what the side yard should be and what it is in the plans. Legalizing and incentivizing land development more consistent with borough character. I believe it was brought up, Ramsey brought up Tom Doherty's presentation at our last Planning Commission meeting. This is that issue kind of summarized. Tom's presentation is kind of a jumping off point. We've discussed this with all the large buildings at every SALDO application review, trying to make these buildings look more like they're part of the borough. It's basically impossible. They're too big. So we want to legalize and incentivize land development that is more consistent with what we want to see. And in some cases, that means legalizing what are already non-conforming buildings, ones that are too small that don't actually meet the current code. So we're going back and looking at the previous versions of the code and looking at other municipalities figuring out what we can do to incentivize the right kind of development that we'd like to see. And then finally, another ongoing issue that we've been discussing for years is inclusionary housing, affordable housing, attainable housing. We want to take the opportunity now, while we don't have a backlog of SALDO applications, to try to brainstorm and meet with the solicitor, borough consultants, developers, other experts in how to evaluate and identify appropriate alternatives to incentivize the development of inclusionary housing. I've listed a few of the ideas that we've batted around. Ray Ott was kind enough to draft an ordinance amendment that we are using as a starting point. It's really just a starting point. He admitted it doesn't address all of our needs, but it's a great starting point. It's really appreciated. And so we're hoping to get this year to make that really make that happen. And we'll see how far we get. So those are the issues we've discussed. Again, first 3 months, you'll see a lot of those in the next quarterly report, I'm sure, hopefully with some actions taken. I'll take any question on this or anything else.
So I thought for some reason, didn't we approve the building height? Yeah, we're good on the building height.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't have that update. Yeah.
So,
That
and
makes
that's another thing might be good for the next round is like have a column that like, that also has what we voted on that, you know?
Yeah, that's in the body of the annual report, but I didn't want to presume to put, since it's a planning commission report, the current status, the council.
Column.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
okay.
sometimes
It's all right.
well, the reason I didn't, honestly, there were some that the planning commission didn't approve and then council does. And so it just looks a little awkward, I guess, but it's all explained later on, but I absolutely can do that. That's easy.
Thank you.
Yes.
I love your enthusiasm.
Hey, that's all I've got.
Hey, you're bringing it all the way. Most people in the borough don't know that in 2018, we adopted the Dark Skies initiatives. Can you speak of that? Because people keep thinking that we don't care about it or it's not included. I know it's a recommendation, but can you take a second, because somebody was supposed to be here 2 months in a row about that, but I
Okay,
know it's in our ordinance.
Yeah, I don't feel qualified to speak to it, Jim. I don't know if you can, only because I'm not as familiar with it. We actually haven't, we've been discussing it off and on in our meetings, but
Yeah.
it's never been formal.
Because we did discuss it
Yeah.
with Pete Staz
Yep.
for his buildings, and Eli Khan, and both developers have agreed to use the Dark Sky Initiative
Yeah,
on their lighting.
And Jim has talked to them a
Jim
little bit.
Sharp.
I need some more excitement. Come on, Jim.
Excellent. I'm never going to be able to match that enthusiasm, though. But yes, and every development that comes in front of us, we're looking to understand from the applicants what kind of foot candles, what kind of light the developments are producing, and most importantly, how much potentially might leave the site. So the intent with the Dark Sky is that we're not just overlighting developments and especially hot spots or lights that are in people's eyes or distracting especially if it's adjacent to a residential district, that lights are intended to be cut off and contained within the development. We're trying to warm up or provide there's a Kelvin temperature, but there's a warmer light, more similar to a incandescent light than it is to some of those sodiums or those either bright yellows or bright blues or I'll just say cooler lights. We're trying to keep them warm. We're trying to cut them off, contain them, and reduce the amount. We do want to maintain a perception and a reality of a safe, walkable sidewalks and stuff. So we still want to maintain from a safety standpoint, vision through blocks and stuff. But on every application, we do ask the applicants, and they're able to provide, their lighting consultants or their electrical engineers are able to provide site plans that actually provide a grid that has the foot candles or the amount of light that's emitted in each location. So they're always asked, and we're always making sure that they're compliant with that.
Thank you. And then next thing, the inclusionary housing.
Yes.
In our ordinance, we also have a corridor that the inclusionary affordable housing is supposed to be built in. Is this part of, there is a specific corridor that it's, I don't know whether it's demanding that they're built in that corridor, or is that just a recommendation be built in that corridor?
At this point, it's not specific to a particular zone or a particular approach. I think the conversation's been actually ongoing for a while. We hear a lot of conversations about affordable housing, and I think that we talk about the different nuanced languages that come along with that. So really, affordable housing is really a tax credit development and workforce housing. When we're looking at attainable housing, we're looking at individuals looking at the price of house and saying 800,000, how about 300,000 or 150,000, whatever it might be. So attainable is really the appropriate language to find for homeowners to look at what it would cost to find a residence that they could purchase that would be within, I'll just say, appropriate relative to their wages and their ages and so on. So there's different components and pieces to that. The 65% of the borough is rented. All right. So then you say, hey, the borough is really expensive. Well, we're not going to find a lot of people that have come in here and they're investors and they own properties and they're just going to voluntarily cut their rates in half. All right. So we got to figure out how to incentivize, how are we going to reduce dollars and costs we're gearing towards, there's elderly people that have been in the community for a long time, and their ability to step out of homes that they presently have and then still stay within and reside within the borough, move over to an apartment. But they look at the costs of the apartments, and you're looking at, $2,100 for a 1 bedroom or $2,800 for a 2, as an example. It seems like it's a lot of dollars. It's not seems like, it is. So it's hard to go from I paid off my house to now I'm going to pay, $40,000 a year to rent an apartment. So how do we address that? How do we address the younger people? How do you give them an opportunity to say, I'm stuck in this endless loop of the apartment's too expensive. I can't put any down monies together. So it's the comprehensive plan states a desire to increase owner occupancy within the borough and try to understand it. It's hard because there's a lot. And a lot of, I'm just going to say, conversation crosses each other and kind of gets conflated. So we're trying to break that down. There's student housing. There's just all sorts of different types of stuff. So inclusionary housing, and the concern there is, much like with short-term rentals, we don't want to incentivize investors in there, which just compete and drive up the costs for for younger peoples. So we're trying to find a solution in there. We're also trying to do it so and what's proposed presently with the Ray's ordinance, he based that on Penn State's ordinance. So really what that is the discussion of what's really happening within that and what are those requirements and how can we do that better? Because presently what that ordinance asks for, if a developer is building 10 homes, maybe one of them has to be at a level of a workforce housing, or pay a fee in lieu. So what's been happening in Penn State is almost 100% they're collecting fees in lieu. Why they're doing that is they're not going to be stuck in a situation where one individual is paying significantly less than the other people. So neighbors find out that an individual paid 70% of what they did. They want to know why. Same thing with rent. And so it's not stigmatizing that and not penalizing the other owners, because we know who's not going to actually pay it is the developer. They're going to pass that on. So it's not that the one got less, it's the other 9 got more expensive. So it's it kind of fights itself. So we're trying to figure out how to actually, what this really means and how we really do it. Typically, you're looking about right-sizing properties, which speaks to Thomas Doherty's approach. There are a lot of different housing types. There's accessible dwelling units. That's one of them. That provides the opportunity with home ownership and the ability to invite kids back in, invite in-laws in to increase that kind of density. But there's an ownership and there's there that's different than if you divided a house into 5 pieces and then left and it's 5 different renters. It's a different type of, we want that community, we want that continual growth of community. So that's in the comprehensive plan. I think it was Ms. Brown that had started that. That's where the inclusionary housing came from. It was still a follow through. I think Diane LeBold had carried that forward. And so it's a continuation of that discussion. And it's a really hard one because it's not Westchester Borough, it's national. California, New York, they're even worse off than we are relative to dollars. So it's funny because we, Matt, Alan, and Steve have been attending the courses with the county, and we're listening to other townships, other municipalities, boroughs, and cities, and looking at and listening to the problems that they're having. And they're so different than our problems. Honeybrook's, they're trying to preserve 10-acre lots and no less than 2-acre minimums and that kind of stuff. And we're just dealing with a different set of issues. So that's what we're dealing with. And maybe there's middle range housing, there's smaller houses, there's more dense houses and that kind of stuff. Trying to figure out how that might fit in. And again, just being very careful that what we're not accidentally doing is increasing the dollars. So we have a happy problem. It's Westchester's in demand, and demand's what actually sets the price. So people want to be here. Like I've said before, it's like that restaurant that nobody ever goes there. It's too crowded. I think that's the borough. So I think that's what people do, and it sets the price. So
I will just add, to answer your original question, Dornan, I believe my understanding is that inclusionary attainable housing is not limited to the corridor to which you're referring. I think that was identified as preferred or likely, but we are not limiting ourselves to that. And in fact, we would obviously like to expand it and work with other surrounding municipalities to partner with that to try to increase the availability. So,
Thanks, man.
all right.
Bernie, I got caught up with the enthusiasm level and
Oh, I enjoyed it. Hey, you know what? Yeah. Oh, Daryl Down, his brother.
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. Does Planning Commission think parking space should be required in short-term rentals?
It looks like it's contentious.
I believe we had it.
You're in center field by yourself,
Yeah,
coach. You're
I
gonna
believe
catch
we
it.
had, what's that? I believe we had requested a parking spot for those short-term rentals, so.
I'll let I have another question. So I was letting these
Yeah,
guys
thank
go, but I want to. So I was asking because the ICC thing came up a couple of months, and so I was asking a couple of the contractors in town just their opinions and stuff. And one thing that came out of it, not ICC related, was just the code in general. That I guess they're working off a 2018 code or something. It's relatively old. Is there opportunity to look at that and just see? I mean, like. What I didn't know exactly what they were talking about within it, but yeah.
ICC is the International Code Council. It's the overriding body that looks at all the different building codes. There's the IBC, which is the building code, the IRC, which is the residential code. They have plumbing, energy, efficiencies. So they're the authors of the code. The codes are national and they're adopted locally. So they're enforced. So the boroughs or whatever municipality it might be, in our case, it's a borough, adopts a code. That code is not updated yearly. That code is maybe updated every couple years. So the 18 is very common right now. So even though it seems like it's old, as the building code officials and the zoning officers and so on, it'll be a building code official that does the IBC or the ICC's requirements. They'll look at that, and as soon as when they're revised, you can kind of understand what those improvements are, and then it's up to the borough whether they adopt that newer code or not. But you have one for accessibility, you have one for building codes and so on. The ICC certificate, though, it's primarily a safety training.
So how many codes have come out? So, okay, that was very helpful. So we don't write the code, we just,
No.
okay. How many have come out since 2018? Is it time for us to consider, and I don't know what changes have happened in it, but I don't know what
think it's- I think
changes
it's every 3
happened.
years,
Is there
so it's
something
21 and
worthwhile like
24, but-
readopting in there? I don't know.
To have an older code, I mean, expensive.
Oh, sure. No, that's not.
They're not giant changes every year. So when they wrote them and adopted, so we used to, you might remember Boca or Cabo were the older codes. They were state by state and local, but they've adopted, the ICC has been adopted by the whole country. So it's not.
Okay. Yeah. So
But I
so
would
you guys
say-
are saying
I would
that.
say your building code official, when they're reviewing it, or the interim, can decide if enough has been added to the code that they'd want to switch over to that. It's worth.
Yeah, have we done that assessment? I guess that's the question.
The last 2 months we have not.
Come on now. What have you been doing?
Francis done a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we, don't know if we have recently. I mean, I think that would be something that we should consider. I think it's also good to consider other municipalities nearby are operating under, because we all share contractors.
Oh, Sean, you can talk to your friends. Sean, can you ask your friends what codes they're using? Have you been listening? What year?
I would just speak to that 18 is very common still. Yeah.
I just reached out to the president of ICC, and I'll be hearing back because he listens to our meetings. I'll
Oh,
let you know.
Okay.
all
fantastic.
right. Bernie's on it. Thanks, Bernie.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you
Good.
guys again. All right. Lisa, yeah.
Sure.
Lisa Kearns, West Biddle Street. Just a few things. Matt's very, he doesn't take enough credit. That report he put together, he basically just created it out of his head. And when you read it, if you haven't read it yet, it's fantastic. And if you look at what other municipalities have put together, it night and day. A lot of those municipalities, because it's a requirement, they'll just attach all the minutes from all their meetings and give it to you. He went in and each project, he took you through everything that happened in one place. So just my hat's off to you, Matt. You did a fantastic job. And one of the other things you'll see, the legalize and incentivize land development, more consistent with the borough character. That gets to a lot of what you've been talking about, Nicole. And I was fascinated to find out at the last planning commission meeting that most of them are like residential type, that you couldn't build them now. They're against code. You would need an exception. You would need a zoning variance. What we've approved is what you're getting with the Burger King and the Mitch's Gym and the Rubensteins. And that takes me to my last point, which is what Ramsey talked about, which is that presentation by Tom Doherty. Again, fantastic, just like you talked about. And I think you'll really find it very interesting about how we move away from those things and into the character of the borough and really incentivizing that instead of what we are doing. Oh, and one other thing, the Green Team and the Dark Skies Initiative, I don't know how that's getting messed up, but I was at the Sustainability Advisory and they did the presentation and they had no idea they were on the agenda for last
No,
month.
this month we talked with Tim and he was ready to be here, but he is in Maryland tonight. We're like, nope, Wednesday, Wednesday's the night. Sorry. So
Great, again, a great presentation. I think you'll really.
yeah. So the Tom one, but Ramsey, you said June. Why not? Why wasn't it May? Why wasn't it next month that we get to see it or hear it? Okay, I know for Tom. Because I thought you said June. Oh, okay, because this is not, the more detailed report, you guys are coming back, Matt, okay, now I understand.
And it's really
Okay.
good. Something
Okay.
to look forward to.
All right, okay, that, I understand that. I thought that this was the recap, but wait, there's more. This is a nugget. This is a nugget. All right, okay, got it. All right, any other comments? Okay, cool. Well, yes, Mayor. So thank you. So the mayor, for those of you who are listening or will be listening in the future, was saying that we should get to these planning commission meetings. What I will say is I was all teed up to get there on the 19th and somebody canceled that meeting. And so I don't know, somebody wanted to go to like St. Patty's Day festivities or something. I don't, but so I was there, but I think one thing it might be worthwhile looking at, because there are also meetings that are on the same night as our meetings in here. So it's really tricky I know my schedule's a little tricky in trying to find that right month where it doesn't line up and I can make it there, because I do very much enjoy when I have been there. So I don't know if that's something that can be talked about, like maybe we.
Still take it month to month to the extent we can, but for the same reasons, we kind of lock that schedule for our folks too. So keep trying.
I'd like to pick up on something the mayor mentioned too, is, making them available, recorded, so you can listen on Facebook or YouTube or the same way the council meetings are?
Matt, sorry. Since we're having a conversation. Yeah, I guess you are pretty loud.
Previous regimes had frowned on that or prevented us from recording. We do have that in our procedures as an option. So we can, our group has been satisfied with the minutes being more detailed than previous. So we're working towards a more detailed record, but if we were requested to record it, I don't know about Zoom. I mean, I don't know what the capabilities are in the room we meet in, so I don't know if that's possible. But recording obviously is, so we could consider that. But that would we have to take it up with the whole planning commission, I guess. But we have talked about it.
I say thank you. I know that, well, one, like I said, the minutes and this report, eons from what we were getting
It's still a
before.
step forward, but we
Yeah, oh my
can always
gosh.
do better.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, just being able to make those meetings has been a challenge.
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
Madam Chair, the report from the ICC, every 3 years, it's updated. The state's about every 5 years. PA is still using 2018 and not sure if they've adopted the new versions.
All of Pennsylvania. is
All
still-
Pennsylvania,
okay.
yeah.
Well, so thank you. And thank whoever you're messaging.
I got
about.
friends around. the
All right. Well, okay. So thank you guys again and look forward to seeing your additional information. And let Jeff, Bill, we can get with Bill and talk about, once they figure out about filming the meeting and kind of try to work that out. So, okay. All right. Annual report of the committee to reestablish rail service to Westchester.
All right, good evening, council members. Jason Levin, Chair of the Rail Committee, here to talk about the annual report. I believe council has had it for about a month, but I can kind of go through high points. We have a presentation on the business survey. If you want to dig into that, we can have some slides on that, different questions. But yeah, I guess high points are, in the past 6 months, we've really started to re-engage with SEPTA. A lot of help from Commissioner Moskowitz in that regard and Representative Pielli. Kind of getting on the same page with them of, if this project proceeds, not pursuing similar funding sources that SEPTA would seek from, so that we're not dipping into the same pots they would dip into. We had discussions on the lease that have led to, the current conversations. We had discussions with their real estate folks about potential sale versus potential long-term lease. Kind of went away from the sale. They pushed us away from the sale concept. That's why we're kind of in the lease mode at this point. Business survey, I want to thank John O'Brien, if he's still here, yes, for helping us. The committee put those questions together, but he sent it out to his members. It was very helpful to do that. We're happy with the results. Other things, obviously, you saw the news about the 501c3 organizations. So the committee did the research last year looking into different governance models. So we looked at the authority model versus 501c3 model. We kind of did a pros and cons. The biggest downside of authorities is that it would create overlapping jurisdiction with SEPTA. So that's kind of a non-starter. It's also a much bigger lift to set up an authority versus just setting up a nonprofit. So once that sort of research was completed, a couple members of the committee who happen to all be borough residents decided that they were going to take that into their own hands outside of the committee. They set it up themselves. And so they set up 2 organizations. And that was also part of the discussions. We got briefings from Transportation Management Association of Chester County on their setup, because they're a 501c setup. And they explained that the C3 format is the standard organization, but the C4 format is there for advocacy purposes. If you want to do any kind of lobbying for state funds or federal funds, you would need that in order to take on those types of activities. So that's why the C4 is there, really. But they basically have the same missions other than that advocacy lobbying element, as you can see in the mission statements. So they're all that those organizations have right now are mission statements. They don't have boards. I think there are plans to try to constitute boards for them and try to get actual staff who are focused. But that they're basically in their infancy right now. so there's not much to them.
There are committee members on those 501c3s, right? Like my understanding is when I looked at the list that the people that are actually involved in it are the same people that are on the restoration.
Correct. So Jim Sargent
Maybe.
is a lawyer. He volunteered his time and his energy to actually do the incorporation process. So it was essentially a donation on his part. And then the first two officers are also two members of the committee. It's Kim Beauvais and Liz. So yeah, they're also members of the committee at this time. So I don't think I have any other major points, but obviously we've had back and forth on ridership. I'm happy to dive into anything you guys want to look at.
Yeah, guys.
All right. Well, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first? All right. Okay. Here's the thing. The way you guys have been running this is driving me bonkers. I can't, I think you guys are putting the cart before the horse. You're setting up 501c3s, even though somebody else did it on the side. I mean, you guys that are on the committee are on the 501c3. So there's a conflict, but you're doing all these things that are trying to operationalize something extremely expensive where you've been told that you can't do it. And as I've said to you before, I've said to you for the past year, you aren't considering ridership to the right extent. I read your survey. You didn't ask one person who's going to ride this train. You're like, is somebody that's going to work for you sometime in the future, maybe come to your restaurant, going to maybe ride the train? And people are like, sure, I don't know. And you're like, oh, this is great. I wrote myself a note in Bernie fashion
You have
so
to
that
write it down.
I don't ramble.
I love the
I'm
word
still
philosophy.
probably going to ramble a little bit, but here are my thoughts. I got. Okay. All right. So I asked you, Jason, who's going to ride this train? Who do you think's going to ride this train? And you sent me 4 bullets. Okay. Number 1, you said educational institutions. Both Westchester University and Cheney have partner campuses in Philadelphia, making easy connections between campuses a likely source of continued ridership for students, faculty, and staff. They also have significant growth in student body and housing shortages in the borough. Cheney's looking to grow enrollment. So here's my thing. Here's my response. Currently, Westchester University has a shuttle bus that runs to Exton Station in order to get students to Philadelphia. That bus is free, so it doesn't cost the students anything. Like whatever third-party train shuttle to the train would not be free. So this is free. And right now they have about 10 riders a day. So even if they exponentially grow, it's not going to happen. And that said, why would they pay? They're not going to pay. And also, we've seen some previews of this plan. I hear nothing from the university, nothing from Pesci that says that they are really trying to expand into Cheney. So I'm not sure where this information is coming from, where you really think this ridership is going to be, because if I was a student, first of all, it's very low ridership already for a free bus to do the same thing that whatever train to a train would be the only answer that you can do right now, because SEPTA's not building out their line for hundreds of millions of dollars. So, I mean, your solution's train to train. So that's my response to the student. I don't see it. I play it out and I'm like, I don't know who's riding it to a sustainable level. I'm sure it's not 0. I don't think any of these are 0, but I can't see it to a sustainable level that would pay for, and that if my tax dollars were used, that would be a good use of my tax dollars. That's the first one. Workers. So you said service workers and potentially some professional workers would be expected to commute into the borough in the morning, while a significant amount of professional workers would commute from the borough into Philadelphia and beyond. The reverse would happen in the evening. Okay, so my first question is, what service workers? If the train runs to a train only on weekdays, which is what we're saying is going to happen because we're not going to hurt the profitable, sustainable, train of 20,000 riders a year that come to the borough of the historic train. So we're not doing weekends. That's what everybody's agreed on. So it's only weekdays. So what service workers are going to come in only on weekdays? The restaurants that you surveyed are like, yeah, great. But then the one guy at least responded, because I got the whole survey from John. He responded like, but if it's not on the weekends, it doesn't really help me, right? Like, because that's when people come to restaurants, nights and weekends. So I don't know who those workers are. I also know that I commute to Philadelphia 3 to 4 days a week. I commute. And here's the thing. I am compensated enough for the ride because it's like $20 a day to go into Philadelphia from Westchester. I also, more importantly, have the flexibility. My company does not, if I show up late because SEPTA's been late, I'm not going to get fired. No matter how many times SEPTA's late, they're not going to fire me and my coworkers who all ride the Paoli-Thorndale line. If you're a service worker, you're an hourly worker. I was even talking to my dentist this morning. Actually, it came up. She used to take the train out of Philadelphia to Exton, or no, from Westchester to Philadelphia, from the area to Philadelphia. And she stopped because she was like, I had to get up at 4 a.m. to make sure I got in so I could hit my patients, because if I was late, it was a problem. Like there are not a lot of workers, service workers, that A, have the money, or B, have the time or the flexibility to ride the train. So I don't know who's part of this piece. They don't have that flexibility. Professional workers, again, that's me. I work for a company in Philadelphia, which I commute to 3 to 4 times a week. And I know what professionals value in the commute, and it's time and efficiency of travel. And so I kind of mapped out Westchester Borough to Philadelphia versus Exton to Philadelphia. Moment for a pause. Westchester Borough example. And I'm a walker. I walk everywhere. I walked here tonight. How'd you get here?
I always drive.
You drove? How'd you get here? You drove? Yeah. So there, first of all, you got to figure there's no parking. Who's going to walk? I'm a walker, so I'll tell you, I'm your target. And I'm going to tell you why I wouldn't ride the train to the train. Westchester Borough. First, have to walk 10 minutes, maybe more. I live kind of close to the train. 10 to 15 minutes to the stop, knowing there's no parking. So I'm walking there. Somebody's walking there. The commuter train takes 20 minutes. It's a shuttle train to Wawa. So about 20 minutes. And then you have to walk over a bridge, which isn't built yet, but it would cost millions of dollars to build. The idea is that somebody had to walk over a bridge, and it would be like 5 or 10 minutes, this walk over this bridge, to hopefully match up to a train that's kind of waiting there. But it's not going to be exact. So then they got to wait for, let's say, another 5 or 10 minutes, right? And then the train takes them into the city. So at best, your commute's like an hour and a half, something like that, right? The train takes them to Wawa. They got to walk over the bridge, wait for the other train. Hopefully they match up, because SEPTA sometimes is not on time, or that other train might not be on time because things happen, right, all the time. So hopefully they can match it up. So again, about an hour and a half, maybe more, maybe less, Exton example. I walk out of my house, I hop in my car. It's a 10-minute drive to Exton. I wait for the train for about 5 minutes. I get on the train. I can either get on Amtrak, which only takes 30 minutes to get to the city, or I get on to SEPTA, which takes about 50 minutes to get to the city. That's less than an hour. I can leave my house at 7:16 and be in my building at like 8:20 after I walk from the train into my building. It's a quick walk. So I'm confused where the value proposition is. Like, I don't see it. And I don't think you guys are asking the right questions. You're still in this mode of like, hey, do you support the train? And people are like, sure, because they don't know the specifics. They don't know the costs. They don't know the operations that you're kind of backed into, which is very narrow. And they don't know how it's really running. So of course you're going to get this fluffy response from people, but you are 10 years in. If you really want to make this work, you got to ask people the right questions. If you really want to be of value to the borough, because right now you're not of value to the borough. You're making things hard for us. I watched last night's meeting. It was not a fun meeting. And I just watched the way people are so content. The people in the historic train are like on eggshells, because they don't know if their profitable business is going to be swept under them, and the other people are just like wondering what you guys are doing. And my thing is that you're not asking the right questions. And again, I mean, I could go on. I have similar responses to healthcare institutions. Same thing. These people work 8 to 10 hours. You're saying they're going to take an hour and a half train out to here and then walk like 15, 20 minutes to the hospital, hopefully making their shift on time, and then work 8 to 10 hours and then take another hour and a half train back. I don't see it. And then tourists, again, tourists travel on weekends. The train's not going to happen on weekends. Where are these tourists coming from? These are the pieces. The questions you should be asking, not these fluffy, oh, do you think somebody somewhere in the future is going to ride a train if we happen to have it in Westchester? If you really want to make sure you understand whether you have ridership and actually be a benefit to the borough, these are the questions you should be asking. I suggest, Dana, I'll send them to you. You can put in the minutes. Write this down. And the next time you guys, you don't have to do anything fancy. Stand on the 104 line at a couple of stops. Ask the people riding the buses. Go to Exton. Ask the people riding at Exton. But you want to ask them, and ask the people that live in the borough. Because again, you're looking for something that has no parking. So you want people to walk there. So you have a short radius. And as we already noticed, people in the borough, especially when they're commuting, aren't walkers. They're trying to get there fast. They're trying to get to their jobs. So your pool of people that are walking is already small. And then where you're going is you're sending people a long distance around, which is small. So next time you ask people, you have to say, do you currently use public transportation? What mode do you use? From what stop to what stop do you go? Approximately how often do you take the transportation each year? If there was a third-party train that ran weekdays only between the borough of Westchester and Wawa Station that then connected you to a SEPTA train that runs into the city, would you use that train? If so, where would you go? If so, approximately how often would you take this transportation each year? And if no, please elaborate. And then you can ask them for any other comments. But those are the questions. At 10 years in, these are the things you should be trying to find out, not whether somebody wants to maybe support a train someday in a year, because you're not getting real feedback and you're not doing anybody a favor. Jim apparently just spent $3,000 putting together a nonprofit for I don't know what, because you're putting the cart before the horse. You guys need to understand if there is ridership, which I don't think there is, and I definitely don't think there's enough ridership to sustain the millions and millions of dollars that it would cost to set up this train that only goes to a couple of stops and into Wawa. I mean, your cheap model that you're not going forward with was going to be like $50 million to set up, and then like a $3 million loss per year, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And that was only serving like a couple hundred people, maybe in your estimate. I'm not even sure you have that couple hundred of people that would ride this train. And that's what you guys need to prove to me. I'm not necessarily saying I can't say I don't like an idea of a train. Everybody's like, yeah, sure, great idea. What I don't like is that you guys have a terrible business plan. You have no business plan. You have no idea who your riders are. I'm not sure you have the right people on your committee to figure it out. Do you have a marketing person on your committee? You need somebody that's done product launches and understands how to try to figure out a target market, because it's clear you don't have that kind of person on your committee. And it's like I said, it's driving me bonkers. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I don't want to approve all sorts of crazy stuff of people asking for money for you, because you don't even know what you're going to do. And it's kind of crazy to me. So that's my
I'm looking
dissertation.
for soapbox.
Just a couple quick, I mean, I'm not going to do a long response, but just on the educational institutions, we see it as not just students, it's staff, it's people coming in for different events, things like that. That's one thing. Workers, definitely understand your concern about service workers on the weekends. That's definitely a loss of ridership to not have weekends. I think that's something to talk about down the road. Definitely hear you on trip times. We did do a memo on that last year. I'm happy to dig into that with you more to see if there are assumptions we're making that are wrong there, but we did put that together and did.
I read it and I calculated against it, and yeah, you had,
So we can look at that.
you weren't thinking about the wait times and the transfer times and all of those things that
We
that
did
add
put
in.
a number in there for that, but if that's a wrong assumption, we can definitely look at that.
Missed a couple things.
On the survey, I definitely hear you on asking more questions. I think TAC is going to do a big survey of some kind, right? But we're happy to support that and add those questions to it and make sure that they get answered. I think that makes sense. Marketing, I kind of see that as something that the 501c could do and put that together. but
It's not about marketing. It's about having somebody with the mindset of a product launch and understanding, like like I said, you've been asking all the wrong questions to all the wrong people. Your survey, I read through it and I found it a little fluffy and not, it doesn't ask the right questions. If you have someone with a marketing mind, it's not about getting the word out. It's about knowing somebody that knows how to build a product launch and understand what customers, how to figure out your target market, different type of marketing, just so you know.
We would definitely need that if we're once we get closer to launch. I agree.
No, you need it now.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not going to repeat all the things that she said, but I ditto everything that Nicole said. My concern, and you said this a little bit, is where is the plan? It's been 10 years for this committee. As I said last night, I've been on Borough for 5 years, and this is the topic that we have spent the most time on with no progress, zero progress. Where is the plan? You know, you did the survey. I would recommend that you get an independent professional survey company to do the survey, to come up with the questions that are going to get you the answers that you need, right? You know, one of the questions is where's the parking? If there are going to be thousands and thousands of commuters from the, you know, all of the expansion of the population, where are they going to park? Where are they going to park? Where is that in the plan? Where is that in the plan? The other concern that I have is how the committee is being run. We see no minutes. We see an annual report.
We post monthly minutes. So
I don't see them on a regular basis.
send them directly to you. Is that the issue?
That would be helpful.
Okay, 'cause
Yeah, we
definitely-
get the planning commission minutes. They've come to me. Yeah. in
Okay,
the
Yeah.
'cause
email, yeah.
I mean, Dana, I know she posts them to the borough every week, every month.
Okay,
So
well,
happy to send those to you on a regular. Yeah.
and you know, when you come to borough, when you come to council, you know, it feels like a surprise attack, right? We're not given information in advance. We're reading it you know, right before the meeting. And as a committee of the borough, I would expect the committee to partner with the Historic Railroad. Ms. Vaccaro last night lost her stuff, right? Because she felt that it was and it has been. And that's because the Historical Railroad, historically, since I've been on this committee, half of the existence of the committee has not partnered with the Historic Railroad, and they feel threatened. They have been running a business. They have been volunteering their time. They have been maintaining those tracks. The gentleman, the vice president last night said they want to do a fundraiser. They need to do a fundraiser, but they can't do it on a yearly, you know, year-to-year basis lease. Sean and company have been working on that lease for 9 months, 9 months. And the day that the current council was to approve it, we were thrown a curveball. And we're back at the beginning. The Historic Railroad has another, you know, yearly lease, assuming they'll get another yearly release, and we're right back to ground zero.
And
I'm not done. I'm not done. The whole formation of the 501c3s, I find it very hard to believe that those were formed without consultation with the borough, with the council. Like, where was permission given to that committee that exists at the pleasure of borough council to go forward and form those nonprofits with no vision into a plan and how they were going to benefit council, benefit the borough, benefit residents? This is exhausting, absolutely, positively exhausting for us to have we spent a year and a half doing short-term rentals. I've been doing this for 5 years, and we are nowhere closer to getting it done than we were the first time I heard the discussion. I have heard SEPTA say, we're not doing it, we're not interested, we don't have the money. Now that has changed. SEPTA needs to come before us and make that statement so that we're willing to invest the time and the money and do it. And not a politician, We want to hear it from SEPTA, where their interests lie. And further, this is not just a Westchester Borough issue. That train has to run through multiple municipalities. Where are they at the table? Are we doing this in vain because nobody has any interest in doing this at all? Where is that? Again, where is the plan? Where is the plan? I've got notes all over the place because this has taken up so much time.
Can I interject the thing? The other thing that I read that I think we read on the 501c3, part of the reason that the historic railroad's on edges is like your 501c3 basically says you want to take them over and you want this other third party or whatever, however you're wording it, to actually run the historic and the other railroad. That's how it's interpreted and read. If you're shaking your head, but that's what it says. So I'd go back and read it.
But yeah, that's not the purpose. And I mean, the coordination with the historic railroad, I cannot agree that we're not being cooperative with them. We reach out to them on a regular basis and they stonewall every time. So that's on their side. When I took over as chair of the committee, I made it clear that we always wanted to keep them in the fold. So they just don't want this, all right? They don't want anybody on their railroad. They don't want any change. That's the facts, right? So
we hear the same thing from them. So somewhere, in the middle is the truth, right? But you have to collaborate with them.
we want to.
What
They don't
Borough
want
is
us.
telling you, you need to collaborate with them. If you're not going to collaborate with them, I don't understand the purpose of the committee. I really don't.
Well, and
This is so contentious and so exhausting.
And I would go back to the plan thing. If you guys had like a feasible plan that made sense for everybody, we'd all be like, yeah, go for it. But it all goes back to that. We don't see any movement on an actual plan that shows ridership and sustainability that doesn't waste a bunch of taxpayer money that's feasible. And so it's really hard to, you'd be, and that also incorporates the historic railroad. If you had that all packed up and together and could say, hey, listen, this is what we're thinking and this is how we want to work together, then people would respond better to you. But right now, the way you guys are operating, like I said, it's driving me bonkers because it's so backwards and it's not in a great spirit and it's not in a great direction that makes people believe that this is going to happen. Like so many people I talk to are like, we'll let them do it because SEPTA's never going to approve it. Like I hear that all the time. That's what people say behind your back, right? And so clearly you guys got to rethink how you're operating. You were here you were created to see if it was feasible. It was not a mandate. Right now, you guys are operating like you think it's a mandate, and it's not.
I think it's fair, but I think what we're hearing from SEPTA is that they've changed their tune due to their situation.
There's no way. Like my lines I got stuck on the line last week because one of their trains broke down in front of me and we had to wait. They need to repair those trains. They don't have the money.
Right. That's my point, though, is that in terms of assets they have that they're not using and are planning to use for any time soon, that's something that we can look at here as the borough. Like the borough's lease could go for a very long time because SEPTA is never going to come back. So that's the new situation.
But do we need it to come back? Are you going to sell some people typewriters? Like typewriters. Typewriters were big in the 80s, 90s, no one uses typewriters anymore. Are they really necessary? I mean, this rail might just be a typewriter.
I would say again, where's the plan, right? Who's going to run the railroad? We have said it's not something that we're interested in.
Correct. Yeah.
But again, there appears to be a mandate and the nonprofits were created without consultation of council. And there's no plan. Like, where is the physical, profitable plan that shows that this is viable and not someone's great idea?
When the Pop-Up Metro team was involved, they created an operating plan, which I think is still pretty consistent. All you change out is the equipment. And the operating plan is very simple. It's that the passenger operator operates during the weekdays. The Westchester Railroad operates on the weekends. You can get more granular about where the passenger operator is going to park its trains in the yard, what kind of interface it's going to have with SEPTA, but there's really not much else to it.
But again, that plan cost $50 million to stand up and it was $3 million loss. The calculation for revenue was incorrect. You used 365 days versus the 261 days that would not include weekends. So your calculation was wrong. There was no mention of who was riding the train. Again, riders, you just took a number from 2011 and multiplied it by 35% and said, oh, that's going to be our number, which you know that SEPTA's ridership is way down since like 2018. 2018, the Wawa Elwyn line had 11,000 riders a day. Right now, that line has 3,500 riders a day. So you can't use a 2011 number to even a percent. You got to understand who is riding this train. And that's where you guys are operations first and your ridership last. And that's, again, I will use my favorite word of the night, bonkers. Bonkers is the word.
I
of the
agree
night.
with you, and I don't want to belabor it, but I agree with you on the ridership point. We actually asked SEPTA if they would be okay with us updating that ridership study, and they didn't want us to because it would reveal that all of their other ridership studies across their system were out of date. So that's the situation we're in with updating that study. I agree with you. I'd like to see an update. It's going to take some funding to get that update, probably something we can talk about. I'm totally on board with trying to push back on that, because I think we do need something updated. So,
Mr. Schleifer had some stats last night.
Yeah, he sent them to me.
I-
We can post them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hello.
Hi.
I have 5 daughters, a wife, a mother-in-law, a grandmother. I have a lot of women in my life. I'm not getting in between these. Well, I am sitting between the two to try to talk to you. I know not to interrupt them because I would never win. I'm going to take a different spin on the situation. I actually sat and talked to the 4 states person last night, and we talked about the train. I want to talk about the train. I want to talk about the tracks. I want to talk about the commuter. I want to talk about the historic train. And we went out to the trash can because it was easier for me to talk to them because a lot of mess going on in here. Well, what I found out, very basically, is the trains that are sitting over here for the historic train, which I fully support, they're called standard gauge. I said, okay, so your wheels or your rails or whatever, your wheels will fit on this track with no trouble. Yeah, because it fits. I said, okay. If I go buy a Amtrak train, a diesel Amtrak train, and bring it over here, is it standard gauge? She goes, yeah, it can run just like the historic train, the same tracks. So, okay, so my first thought was, why don't the two of you people just get together and try to figure out how to run a commuter train on that damn thing over there? But then I realized that the historic train, and I've been on a lot with, and I've been on with my friend Eric Largus, and that only goes really 5 miles an hour, maybe 15 miles an hour. So it's moses along. So I asked the guy, and I already knew because I was at the pop-up train, that that entire line, all the tracks and all the ballast and everything has to be replaced to run your commuter train on it.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay? Run your commuter train because you're going to go 40, 50 miles an hour, right? So the existing train there is doing what it does. And so before you can consider the train, I don't know. I don't remember because I have senior moments sometimes. I can't remember her name. She's sitting beside me half the time. And I asked, she tells me,
Carla.
yeah, she tries that too. But what I said to the guy at 4 states last night is, if the commuter train can get enough money to start this thing and get all the tracks replaced, you'll benefit from it. Because now you can save all that money that you're doing on maintenance and repair, and it'll fall on the responsibility of the commuter train people. And he said, absolutely true. So that's the conversation I had about upgrading them and upgrading the commuter rail. Because I was kind of curious how you're going to do what you need to do without having the right rails.
Correct.
Okay, so.
That's what the 50 million is, or the
Yeah.
30 million. Yeah.
So that's the big nut right there.
Yep.
So the historic train is already protected in the lease. okay, by SEPTA. It's already protected. So I feel really comfortable about the tourist train.
Yep.
They're protected. So if you guys come up with the 50 million and you put the new rails in, they benefit from it.
Correct.
And they can use all their other grant money to do whatever they need to do.
It's nicer, make the station nicer,
Right.
whatever they want to do.
So I'm happy with all that. You know, I thought it was a real positive conversation I had. But last night, what we did see was him against her. And one person sat here, one person sat there, and they're arguing back and forth. We can't have that.
I agree.
That has to end. I don't know who's going to be the mediator, but that has to stop. As Miss Vaccaro, she, as I said to her last night, she used her mommy's voice.
Yeah.
You know, and she was like her two boys were fighting, and she said, enough's enough. And she just, she would say, she lost her shit last night. And I've been with her for 4 years, and all I ever see her do is smile and giggle. But last night wasn't one of those nights. So it's come to that point of Borough Council now that in Italian, we've had enough. You get it? We've had enough of this nonsense going between you two guys. You need 50 million, even to think. I don't care about the ridership. You need 50 million to even put a foot on the dirt, okay? And I fully support your thought of doing it. The lease is coming up, and I floated to council my thought on what should be added to the lease. It's very simple, and let SEPTA approve it or disapprove it. State Rep Paelli has said that SEPTA is willing to accept in addition to the lease, once council submits it, you know, to SEPTA. And what I was saying was allowing a private operator to run and maintain the commuter train on the Westchester SEPTA line sometimes in the future. Very basic, very clean. It goes to SEPTA, and if they say, okay, you need your 50 million somewhere, okay? If they say no, you know, have a nice summer.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, so, but the conversation I had, I wish we had a beer because it was over a trash can. You know, it was very simply figured out that where your starting point is. And the Miss, I was going to call you Miss Vaccaro, Miss Simone. Nicole, to her point, she has the logistics as far as the money's concerned and ridership. I mean, I yield to her because she knows what she's talking about. And Miss Dorsey is very passionate about the historic train. I'm passionate. We're all passionate about the historic train. But as you two, somebody has to be the big person. I don't know who it is, but we're tired. Well, we're tired of it. And Mr. Metric, he's tasked with Christine Camp of putting a caption in the lease to send to SEPTA. And, you know, it could be over, you know, in 6 months. You know, but,
Yep.
you know, it's both lines, as I found out, standard gauge, they're there. You both can run in the same line. You protect each other and you both can benefit from it. So I took a different approach than that. I think it's possible, but it won't be in my lifetime. Okay. My friend Don Braceland said it will never happen in his lifetime. And Don's at the gates right now. So I'm not sure whether he got in or not, but he hasn't sent me a message.
He
But
got
anyway,
in. He got it.
I hope so. He's a good fella. But anyway, do me a favor, knock it off. You know, if you need somebody to set up a meeting between the two families,
Appreciate
it's almost like we're fighting over it, like the New York mob. You're like, somebody has to be the person to get this thing together because separately, you're not going to get anything.
I completely agree.
And once you piss off SEPTA, it's done. They're just going to say, you know what, we don't want anything to do with this.
If there's any member of council who's willing to set up a meeting, I would attend immediately.
So that's my thoughts on it. All right.
Thank you.
Like I said, allowing a private operator to run and maintain a commuter train on the Westchester SEPTA line sometimes in the future. Very easy. and SEPTA says yes, it moves, to say no, it doesn't. So, thank you, Jason.
I think there's a lot of different languages that are running around that have been used, so.
But
I
that was my
I mean, that's something we talked about in the past because of just because of the quarry. It's there, and it could be an additional revenue stream for whatever source. I don't know if it becomes the past Heritage Railroad would take over the operation and get some revenue out of delivering some ballast cars or something. But just the fact that it's there might as well enable it. That was the thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there was a quarry there that was washed out and the rails were all washed out. That's why the historic train was landlocked. They couldn't leave.
Yep.
And I think pretty soon, I'm pretty sure it's being worked on by SEPTA.
It's
That-
reconnected. I mean,
Yeah, so they're not landlocked anymore, so they can leave and go someplace else if they want to.
I think
Yeah.
Westchester Road actually shipped a locomotive out recently. So.
Yeah, so, thank you.
I just one more thing, since I also think whatever you're talking about from an Amtrak train, that's going to cost more than $50 million because
addition too.
that because it's heavier and all of these things. It's not, the 50 million was just for that little shuttle thing, so.
Oh, no, I'm talking
No, the
about
majority of the cost is for the infrastructure
the,
itself.
the track, the right
No,
ballast, the right stones.
No, but I think, I'm not sure that the track upgrades that they were going to do for the shuttle train, like,
Oh, that was real
that
light.
that was,
That was
super-
what-
like, yeah, so that was what cost
Still,
$50 million.
so it's to get to class 3 track, so that's 60 miles per hour, regardless of, it's a class of track and it has requirements all its own, regardless of what you're running over it. So that's,
Do you have that number in your head, how much it cost?
I mean, I think in our financial plan, it was 30, but
30 million?
I think there was like donation of land from SEPTA, which was like 12 million or something. And then there was like 20 million that came from like the federal government, and then like another 6 million that was going to come from like the state government. That's where I also get concerned too. I'd rather, are they taking away from SEPTA or their roads and things? So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's,
Right, with the current environment too, right? I know
The-
that even
the
before
four states fellow that I talked to,
Yep.
I'll never reveal who it was because he might get tired and feathered by his buddies. But the fact is, he agreed that once that rail is up and running, they can spend a lot more time doing what they want to do instead of working in the dirt. So,
I understand that volunteers, I mean, I did it myself, like doing some of that track work is part of being a volunteer at the Heritage Association. So that I have thought about that. How could we incorporate them to some degree in the future? If it gets fully upgraded and there's no more of that work to do, that's kind of a loss from a volunteer standpoint. So I have thought about that. I know that they're thinking about that. So, yep. Anything else?
Would it help to have a member of the Historical Railroad on your committee?
I would welcome that. Honestly, they used to come to our meetings and there was a moment where they cut off that engagement. And I'm sure they read our minutes, but yeah, I mean,
yeah, the florist, I can remember everything about the lady,
yeah, Beth Ann Keats
that thing,
She
she
went
was
up to
coming and,
pop up with us.
yeah, and then all of a sudden, she was excommunicated for
Yep.
some reason. So,
Something for us to think about, making it a requirement to have a member of the Historic Railroad on the committee.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea too. All
Right.
right, so what other comments do we have for?
Else?
All right, Sean, any comments from you?
We have an action item to consider at next Tuesday's work session to hopefully, what I hope happens next week, if speaking from the administrative side of all this, I hope a decision is made about the lease. I think the easiest thing to get done is the lease in all of this, because the lease is just a contract to operate on the line with SEPTA under certain uses. That's a legal agreement. We were at home plate a month ago. We didn't quite bring it home. Let's agree to get that piece of this transaction done so we can move forward.
You're talking about the 1-year lease.
Whatever council decides next week.
Miss Nicole.
Yeah.
And angels, I get angels a lot in this, sitting in this chair. People just angel me.
Yeah.
What the angel said was, when you make improvements to SEPTA it still belongs to SEPTA, and it all comes down to government funds. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, they're still going to own the line. If they don't sell it to
Right.
us, it's just a lease,
Thank you, Mr. Angel.
whatever that is. Okay. Thank you
All right, thank you.
for work session. Yes. More. Yeah, come back for more.
No, maybe you should buy that or get that vest, borrow it from Odom.
We'll just play the recording next Tuesday.
All right. Okay. Speaking of minutes, Dana, did you get all that? Oh, okay, right. Yeah. I'll send you my dissertation. All right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. So that said, motion to approve Smart Growth Committee meeting minutes from March 2025.
Perfect.
All right. We good? Motion to approve on-street cafe permit for Turk's Head Wines, Allison Owens, another contentious topic.
Yes, I have the site plan. I know I sent it to everyone and I'm sorry. I didn't building. And it just goes a little bit closer to the front door. It's 32 feet, 6 inches. She does inhabit 90% of that building, so it doesn't encroach on Twin Valley Coffee. There is still a parking space available for them. So, more discussion on the actual permitting process later, but
Yeah, I'm good. You good? We're good.
Yep.
All right. Go, Allison.
thank you.
Get us all drunk.
Thank you.
All right, new business. 2025 Gay Street closure rules and regulations and include in the outdoor dining policy.
So John O'Brien and I have been talking about this, and at the very end of the agenda tonight, I also have more discussion about the dining policy that is referenced in our Chapter 90A ordinance, which is for the cafe permits, which we can get into later, but we should be reviewing it. And I know Bernie brought this up previously, that we should be reviewing the policy annually and approving it. John had asked if we could include the suggested closure rules in the policy. I was just discussing with him that because the ordinance requires a cafe permit, and that reflects this policy, and all of the people that participate have cafe permits, I think that we could incorporate this into the outdoor dining policy as a supplement or an addendum to, and update that. So I don't know if you want to talk about any of the rules that you've suggested.
Yeah, so I mean, first to be clear, this is a borough document. This is not the bid policy. I just wanted to kick off the conversation, but I'm not an enforcement agency, so whatever policy is decided ultimately has to come from the borough, so that building and housing has the authority then. The rules are pretty similar to what we have laid out in the past, that they have the width of their building halfway in the street. I do think we need to be a little more strict this year on enforcing that, so that all operators are within that. Doesn't matter whether you have neighbors that are having a setup or not. If you don't, that doesn't mean you get to encroach in the area. Even if your neighbors are okay with it, it's just a matter of fairness. It keeps everything on the level. Obviously, my suggestion about bringing this into the dining policy is so that we don't have to annually do this every year of adopting a rules for the open air market. We've decided we want to continue forward with this. So let's just kind of standardize it. It starts in May. We're not going to probably have the opportunity to do that for this year, but just going forward, if we're going to revisit opening the dining policy in general, I think it'd be beneficial for council to just, whatever the rules are going to be, kind of put them in the dining policy. So it's just there in kind of longer perpetuity.
Yeah, let me ask you a question too, because my mind kind of went to, the middle of the street rule, which we all support and appreciate. Well, there's a new twist this year that I don't know about you. I don't do this in advance, but so every Saturday I look to see if I can get a reservation at the seafood kitchen, and I can't because I wait till
Right.
Saturday, right? Like that's my bad, right? But they're busy. Are they having outdoor dining? Because I know that the major creeper, if you will, last year was OPA. Like, and if they.
Yes,
I mean,
that whole block is going to
space,
have
baby.
to, that block in particular is going to have a, realize that they're going to have to play well in the sandbox together. And I've been reminding them that from talking with the general manager at Westchester Seafood Kitchen. They intend to put tables and chairs out, but that is one of the reasons I think we need to be strict about the halfway rule. So even if there's a weekend that they don't, that doesn't mean a neighbor across the street purchases in the area. And that way, it's also somewhat of a matter of fairness to those who don't have the ability to set up on Gay Street, that we're not creating this extra capacity on Gay Street. That, I mean, yes, most of the restaurants are set up on Gay Street. So
That
it
goes
just
back
creates
to
a
Daryl's
fair
question.
playing field, I feel like, for all parties.
So let me ask you this though, too. Okay, so let's say it's half and half. Like, where are the pedestrians going to walk? Because OPA is also like jammed into the sidewalk. I'm assuming that there'll be tables on the other side. Like, where, like, if you say half, are pedestrians
So
going to be
the
blocked?
setup currently has not encouraged pedestrians to walk in the street. The setup has continued to follow the cafe permit requirements, which are 54 inches of clearance between tables. We all know that there are certain operators that are violating it. I go around with literally a tape measure that I hold out 54 inches and just walk down the streets all over. And if I see a problem, I talk to them. But once again, I'm not an enforcement agent. So they know, I mean, they know that. So they're going to say, oh, yeah, well, we got addressed. But I'm not going to be able to write a citation or, be like, if I come back, then a citation gets written. So there's an enforcement side on that. So right now, the current setup has always been keeping them on the sidewalks. And that 54 inches means, doesn't matter whether it's a bus station, decorative plants, it has to be 54 inches of clearance. And I just feel like we need to continue to push that. In the more detailed plans that like Sean had worked on the more permanent barriers, ADA compliance was achieved with some temporary ramps is what we're hoping to implement. I'm not sure if it's going to be with the delay for this year, but with ADA, that's why we do set back the barriers in a way that, if you are in a wheelchair, you're able to still access the street. And there are natural on ramps from cutouts for parking lots for this or that in most of the mid blocks. But ADA compliance is something we need to continue to think about as we're building out the infrastructure with the barriers as well. And I know Sean's been very attentive to that piece.
I'm just thinking like that the ADA and the fact that I think people prefer to walk down the middle of the street versus going on the sidewalks. So I don't know. Is that something we should think about? Maybe it isn't the middle. Maybe it's like 40% or something, and to leave like a corridor in between the places.
Yeah, I think that is, obviously if we're kind of up against it, May's going to be here before we know it. So I think long-term that could be something. There are other setups you'll see like that I've researched in like Boulder, Colorado, or if you look what Cape May does, they would basically take away pedestrian on the sidewalk completely, right? And then the center chute is where people go. We would first need to make sure the ADA infrastructure is there to accomplish that. But that is one option that we could deploy. Gay Street's not super wide. That's the other thing to just consider, depending if you have a parklet there, yes, it can be wider, but if there's not a parklet there, it can only be about like 36 to 40 feet wide. And that 40 feet wide includes the parklet. So it's not as much real estate as, we think about. Obviously this was a COVID measure. So at the time we wanted to keep that distance between tables as well, to be in compliance with regulations at that point.
Say that if you're going to consider just going down the middle of the road, that's going to impact the cafe permits that are there all week, and they're going to have to like move their tables if you take up the whole sidewalk. So because they're going to have to clear a pathway Monday through Friday on the sidewalk. So I don't know if like that.
Yeah, we can figure that out. It is something I've thought about. I know Sheila's asked me about that before. I don't know if it's something we'll, just because we're so close, be able to implement. But if we approve these rules And so the policy would be all of the participating locations have to sign a copy of the rules, sign the standard indemnification form with the borough. And then also newer this year is we're asking them to send us a plot map of their area. And so all this, we collect that, but we send that to, traditionally it's been Dana, but whoever in borough staff needs that. The plot map was a good idea from Ramsey, so that kind of holds the accountability that they are the width of your building out and makes them more proactively think about that. The other piece is about if you want to set up a tent, you have to have the proper fire rating. The music is allowed, but permitted provided the noise volume does not travel far beyond your outdoor area. Please work with your neighbors when scheduling music or other entertainments. That for those with the LCB license, you have to get a proper extension of permit. Smoking while seated at a bar or restaurant is prohibited. And then we did add language this year just to keep in compliance with the cafe permits about the utensils need to be glass. We're not using reusable plastics. That is just so it kind of keeps that consistency across the board too, to limit renewables.
Knowing that as Public Works because businesses are should be cleaning their stuff up, but if glass falls, it's inevitable, right? Like is there going to be any stepped up cleanup measures taken for that one?
We are in the rules. I believe there's requirements that they keep their area clean. So I think that also too the bid also has a part-time cleaning green associate, which we utilize to clean that area. But that is going to be a big focus, especially for the Saturday morning, like farmers market crowd. I'm now at the point where I take my kids and my dog up there and the late night bar crowd. So we're really going to be continuing to push that as well. And then the Public Works has done a good job with the street sweeper, especially during when the street gets reopened. But that is, we don't have to include that, but I had included that to keep consistent with the borough's environmentally friendly policies that we've been pushing for a while now.
And I don't think it's necessarily bad. I just think we need to make sure we clean it up because stuff's going to break. People are going to do a crappy job of cleaning it up. And then, catch up to at least, cut kids' feet and things like that. Or,
and in
or
compliance
my dog,
with the regulations of the cafe permit, they're required to have an outside trash can for disposing of trash and all that. Our biggest sense of trash, honestly, is takeout eateries from late at night, right? So somebody will get to a Buddy's Burgers, but they're not necessarily eating it in front of Buddy's, right? They'll go down half a block, they'll eat and just leave their stuff there.
And they'll just throw it on the
That
ground.
becomes the problem. So if Buddy's cleans their area, it's still, that's where our biggest thing. One thing I had thought about in addition to this, we have seen and we've heard from, I know Bernie, you've mentioned it about bringing more events, especially to dead zones in the area. I would like to add a line in here saying that something along the lines that the Director of Parks and Recreation or Downtown Westchester has the right to notify businesses on a block that they are not able to set up their tables and chairs at designated times to allow for different events that we might do, just so nobody gets too huffy, for lack of a better word, if we're trying to bring a special event, like we partner with the chamber to do a trike race or something like that. And if, because it has come up, if a restaurant or any kind of business has approached us about doing something a little special in their area, like a more special event, and it goes beyond the scope of their area, we are going to be requiring them to fill out a special event application with the borough, even though that event may not trigger borough services, but just to get a formalized approval for that event to happen.
So I think the next step, this has to go in the policy for the outdoor dining. This has to be an addendum. I do think that we can do it because these businesses do have cafe permits. I think we might step into an issue of enforcement if it's somebody that does not have a permit, a cafe permit, because then we have no enforcement measure because we didn't give you a permit. So I know this won't really have an issue with like retail, but if there's a business that doesn't want to put a cafe permit on their sidewalk during the weeks, but they want to participate in this, I think that we have to, then everybody that wants to participate in this now has to have a cafe permit, which I don't think is required in the ordinance right now, because otherwise we can't enforce it. If they don't have a permit because they're not required to get one, then we can't enforce on behalf of the ordinance that requires the permit.
So wait a minute. There are places that can have outdoor dining without a cafe permit?
Well, I don't believe that this Gay Street closure is not part of Chapter 90A of the outdoor dining because it's not a cafe permit on the sidewalk, so they're not applying for that. But most of these businesses, from what I know, do have them. And it's not an on-street dining platform streetery. So there's no actual Gay Street closure permit. There was never one created.
So they, from the eatery perspective, they all the ones that currently operate do have the cafe permit. And if they don't, they should have already, because during the week, they do set up tables or chairs. The issue we might run into, and we need to kind of think through, is the retail stores that might set up. Now, they're not going to be violating the terms at all because, for instance, like I'll take an example of like Tish Boutique. They'll set up some racks and have a display, but they'll have an employee out there with it. It's because it's their merchandise. They don't want anybody walking out. And it's certainly not going to go any expansive area because they want to control with that employee the movement of the merchandise. Those specific retail organizations wouldn't apply for a cafe permit in a normal situation. So they're the ones that we might need to like tease out how to kind of address that. But in practice, they have not been the offenders with like the clearance on the sidewalks or anything like that. But everybody else would have already gotten a cafe permit. And if they haven't, they've been reminded to. And I've made a big push with the businesses both throughout the district on getting their cafe permits, even having to do a lot of hand holding on how to fill out said cafe permit. It's pretty straightforward, but you'd be surprised. So we're really trying to get proactively address that to make sure everybody's compliance with the regulations you already have set forth. So I guess the ask would be for this year that we do what we've done in the last couple of years, adopt the rules documents. The bid will collect the signatures and the indemnification forms and the plot maps, send them to the borough staff to house. But long-term, we would like to think about incorporating something, making something more permanent so we don't have to do this on a yearly basis.
And probably managed by the borough because we're the enforcement agency. We're the one that would take action. So I think the easiest ask would be to approve these by incorporating them into the policy for work session, which I can do. I'll just put it in as an addendum. But then remember this at the end of the agenda when we talk about changes to the ordinance. Is everyone?
So the ask is to both adopt the rules and adopt them into the policy for this year. I
Yes.
think I'm hearing the both. For a second there, I thought you weren't asking for the
Right, and
adoption.
then, as we're going to look at the outdoor dining policy, just let's all keep it in the back of our minds, make sure that this is good for the permanent, 3, 4, 5 years from now, so that we don't have to revisit this. And tease out how we're going to handle the retail stores.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only a handful of them.
There's only a handful, but
Yeah.
All right.
Good, excellent.
You guys are good? All right.
So we don't have to keep doing it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Letter of understanding with Delaware Valley Planning Commission to participate in the sustainable. Oh, wait, was there commentary from anyone out there? Sorry, I missed you guys. Okay. All right. So yeah. All right. Will, you're up. Participate in Sustainable Buildings Collaborative Energy Benchmarking Program. Energy benchmarking.
Hi there. So I'm here tonight to talk about energy benchmarking. I'll try to be brief because I think the heat goes off in a couple minutes here. If you've glanced at your home's Pico bill, there's a little chart that shows usage month by month. That is your home benchmarked, and Pico is doing it for you. That doesn't actually appear on most commercial bills. In a commercial setting, most energy bills just go to accounts payable and get paid. Energy benchmarking is the simple process of documenting energy usage in larger buildings. It can be done a number of ways. Putting it into a spreadsheet is one way. The most popular is a free, very easy website called Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It's published by EPA, and for now, it still exists. Something very interesting happens when you do energy benchmarking. You use less energy. This has been documented time and time again in places that have it. In my prior professional life, I worked for 2 real estate developers, including the developer and owner of the Comcast Center downtown, and I personally energy benchmarked that building. I benchmark the borough's buildings now, and we found things like huge swings in energy usage, Chestnut Street Garage. And sometimes there's very simple, easy explanations, but without that exercise, we wouldn't find that. Opportunities for energy conservations, impacts from implementing energy conservation measures. I've noticed that every 5 years, you lose your tax exempt status if you're a tax exempt entity on your Pico bill, and they don't tell you, you just start paying 6% sales tax. So we've caught that. We've signed competitive energy supply contracts that tends to save us about 10% versus Pico. There's also a practice in the energy supply world where it can be a mistake. It's usually dishonest energy suppliers will crash your account. That means you're on the Pico tariff or in a competitive energy supply contract, and they sort of like abduct your account and put it on their tariff. And that can be double or triple even the Pico rate. That hasn't happened here, but I've seen it elsewhere, and it's not good. So because benchmarking is easy, it reduces energy use, helps find things like this. 8 states now have statewide energy benchmarking laws of some kind, and over 50 cities in the United States have them. Establishing some sort of energy benchmarking program was one of the steps in our Westchester Area Regional Energy Transition Plan, which Borough Council adopted in 2021. It was also a recommendation in Chester County's Climate Action Plan, which was adopted a few years after ours. That being said, it's a big lift for local government to do on its own. And it's sort of like building codes. You don't want all 3,000 municipalities in the state of Pennsylvania to have their own, initiatives like this. It'd be really confusing for big building owners. So DVRPC, Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, which is a wonderful organization, saw this and is stepping into the void here with this Sustainable Buildings Collaborative. And the action item is just a LOU so that we can participate in that program for the next year or so. What they're going to do is basically create a framework, create a model ordinance, do a lot of education, help us wrap our heads around the number of buildings at different thresholds that might be subject to an eventual ordinance that we may want to consider. The exact ask in the LOU, assign a municipal staff contact. I volunteer myself. Participate in 2 workshops for staff or elected officials. If you're curious or skeptical, I would encourage you to participate. Contribute to the collaborative development of a model ordinance with other municipalities that will be in this initial cohort. I think it'll be 10 or 15 municipalities. Benchmark our facilities and share that information. I'm already benchmarking it. It's a couple clicks in that software I mentioned to share it with DVRPC. Communicate to building owners, again, that might be affected by any ordinance should one be proposed. And finally, and this is the only fiscal ask, that once a model ordinance is developed, that at the very least, we have our solicitor look at it and provide a legal opinion. Participating in this, despite what it says on the agenda, does not commit us to an ordinance. It's really just an exploratory process led by DVRPC with other interested municipalities to work towards something that might work at the local level. And the last thing I'll say is I think this stuff is taking on new importance. We're not going to see, and I don't think this is like a political statement. I just think it's the fact we're not going to see a lot of initiatives or leadership or guidance coming from Washington, D.C. in the next couple of years. A portfolio manager disappeared for a day, happened to be Liberation Day, and we were worried that might be a feared cut. But I think grassroots things are more sustainable under any administration, and they're going to be really important in the next four years. And this is one of them I'd like to get going in Westchester.
So 2 questions, knowing what you just, I mean, it says that this collaborative's funded by the Department of Energy. Any concern that that funding's going to go away?
So my understanding is that money is, I guess, like in the bank, so to speak, for this year and next year. Like it's already been acquired
Already
from the federal
budgeted?
government.
Okay.
So it's not like a reimbursement thing where it could be funded and clawed back. I think the money's in the bank, but I mean,
Sure.
all bets are off.
You're a glass half full kind of guy, right?
Vegans and digestion, cheeseburger, you never know what's going to happen.
Does it cost us anything?
The only cost would be review of a draft ordinance by our solicitor, and that's probably 8 to 12 months from now.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you want to, yeah, sure, go for it. Yeah, let us know. You want to see my Pico bill? I gotta go.
I love
Never
Pico
even
bills.
done. Really? All right. Okay.
That's what I do for fun on the weekends.
Okay. You'll get a couple. Thank you. All right. Saldo amendment from Planning Commission. Are you guys still here? Okay.
Fuck man.
This.
Matt briefly touched on this, but this was the request from Planning Commission. The ordinance amendment was written by Tom Este, requesting that the borough appoint a historical architect to review any development in the HO 60 or HO 75 because that does not trigger a HARB review. So this is, I mean, this is a recommendation directly from Planning Commission. It didn't go back to them, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, hopefully we do whatever happened with that door too, whatever, we update something so that that door thing doesn't happen again. But if this helps.
That's a workflow
similar-
thing that we've internally figured out.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, good. But
Um,
you guys are good.
good.
Any comment from anybody that's still here?
We
Yeah, what do we need to do?
Yes, so we would need to have a public hearing and then after the public hearing, you're going to need to appoint a historic architect. I believe the recommendation is to ask Carol Quigley, who was agreeable to that.
Okay, so the first step is that you're asking us to move
Yes.
this, to approve this so that it can go to a public hearing.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you, Dana. It's past my bedtime.
And is the historical architect compensated?
That is a question that I had as well, so I need to get clarification on
He
that.
should be.
I believe they would be, but I want to make sure that if it is Carol appointed, that there's no conflict.
Yeah, is she allowed to be the chair of
Right,
HARB and still do it?
right. Tom Este was there.
Point of clarification on that, they are asking for an architect for a firm. So I had a conversation with Gal Friends.
All right, well, let's get this
Yeah.
hearing over and then we can dive into, I'm not talking about tonight. Oh, the architect fees.
Reimbursable by the developer. Yeah,
Ah.
yeah.
All right, but for now, we're all good with moving it to the hearing to add
Yeah.
that component in there. We'll continue to figure out the rest part. Okay. All right, HARB applications.
Yes, the first one is for the Chester County Welcome Center sign that will be located out front of District 15104 Courthouse. There were 3 options listed, and I have to now tell you which one it was. I'm sorry. Mm. It is the one on pages 3 and 4 of the final application. I'm not sure what page that is. One.
So they're going to make a welcome center now? Because I don't know if
Yeah.
we have one.
That was, yeah, and I remember hearing that announced at one of our meetings that they were moving into the
Yeah.
house. Yes.
That's the final?
Oh, there you go. Judge
Probably because
Vito
of our
Huff Company.
wayfinding.
Okay, good. Oh, yeah. Is that sign, Ramsey?
I believe.
That's pretty ugly.
Just 3 and 4, but
No, it doesn't.
We
meet
don't
our-
like it.
No, doesn't.
Well,
meet
I
our
like the
color
first
codes.
one.
No.
Yeah, this one's much nicer. What's on the other
Yeah.
page? The
Ramsey,
first,
That's a yuck.
yeah, you like?
Yeah.
The first one looks classy. That one, that's classy.
I agree.
So,
we say
so
no?
no, we don't like it.
Okay.
We've gotten out our aggression tonight. No to the sign.
I think
That's right. I agree. I agree.
this is the one. It is not the one noted
Are we
as option
sure?
3, because if you count the pages, not including the harp cover page, that would be page 3.
All right, let's clarify it. Why don't we say no for now and just clarify or whatever we need to do to make sure that you got the right
If
sign.
you read
okay?
how they describe it, the upper sign panel is taller with the text Chester County Welcome Center. The lower panel is slightly shorter with the text District 15104. So this is the one. I will confirm that, but
Yeah.
as I read this, that is how I
Okay, so
see
that's
it.
contingent on Ramsey confirming the sign.
I am 99% because it says 2 horizontal panels. None of the others have 2. But I will, okay. So is that
We
a
will-
no until
I-
the work session?
Yeah, it's a no until you confirm that it's
Okay.
this one. Yes.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. Okay. The next one was for exterior renovation of Ula Bowls. So they're adding a sign above the front door. It has an exterior slip-resistant vinyl mat. They approved the 3 signs. The east wall blade sign shall be installed at the brick wall above. They are very specific. The first floor green serpentine stone wall. The proposed sliding metal replacement takeout window with an integral exterior air curtain projecting over the window is denied. The proposed replacement window does not match the HARB guidelines. So they're approving the signs, but not the window. Yes. Yes, I think they had a metal one in the specs, so they've denied the window. This is just for the 3 signs. It's a nice looking window.
Painted it 10 times.
Is everyone okay with the recommendations?
Sure, sure. Hopefully this place will stay open more than a half a week.
Santiago?
Acai.
Acai, yeah.
Nick Allen's,
The third one is for 44 West Gay Street, La Scala's sign. It is an illuminated, there's 2 illuminated wall signs. And okay, sorry. The board recommends approval for these. The message on the 2 signs is La Scala's Fire. And there are appliques in the interior of windows. The messages are, let's eat in La Scala's Fire.
All right.
Okay.
When are they opening up?
I know they're working through the construction, so.
I know. And they have a plan. All right. Okay. Okay. So next up, E, discuss solicitor attendance for zoning appeal, 143 East Marshall Street.
So because zoning hearing has time associated with it, I would request that we put this on the work session discussion agenda because I did not see a zoning review in here, so I don't have a review from the zoning officer. So I did send that to him today and ask if he could get it to us by Friday. Because they're asking for a front yard setback, and Dana and I went over, and I'm not a zoning officer, but the letter for the request was not clear. And so you guys need the zoning review to understand if we should oppose or not. They're doing a bump out on the back of the house for a powder room.
This isn't Patrick's house, is it?
I don't think so. I don't think so. So I am not sure if you should send the solicitor because of the confusion over the letter and not having a zoning review. And I apologize that I didn't realize that wasn't in there.
Okay, so the idea is you want this on discussion so you can get all the, okay,
Right,
yeah.
just because
yeah,
I don't
we're
want to
good.
miss a deadline.
Discussion. All right, and then the discuss ordinance chapter 90A restaurant cafes.
So understanding that we're going to update the policy this year, I would like to start the discussion as a group to go over chapter 90A and make some nice updates before next season starts. There have been, so if we could in the next month review the ordinance and if you guys have any red lines I will provide a red line copy by the next smart growth meeting. But I think we need clarity on definitions. I think there should be 3 different permits. If you're participating in the Gay Street closure, make that one. Cafe permit, make that one. And this on-street dining platform should be its own permit with different requirements. That's a very confusing thing for people applying because it's all called a cafe permit. And so it's not clear to differentiate. So, and then if you read the ordinance and the policy, they both kind of reflect each other. It's very confusing. Nothing matches. And I think we could simplify it and then update the policy accordingly. So that would be my request for next meeting.
Okay,
Just wanted to
all right,
bring it up.
we're
Good
good.
job.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Any other business? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned at 8:56.